panic backstage when I've been told that my microphone doesn't fit my head. My head's too big, so we got there eventually. But I'm very calm and very excited about talking what we are about today. When the students came to me a while ago and said, could you talk about Transform Tomorrow? That should be my bread and butter, right? This is what we're here for in education. And so when I took away the topic and thought about how do I want to talk about Transform Tomorrow, I kind of reflected on my own career and where I stand in everything that I do. And so what I wanted to do is take a little point of note and how I deliver that to you. And one of the things I've done, whether it's been as a teacher, whether it's been as a head of year or a senior leader or as now as the head teacher, is look at transforming tomorrow through the individual student. It's one of the things I'm passionate about. And I'll give you 3 examples of when I've used those conversations and spoken with stakeholders, mainly students, about that individual level. And one of the themes today is to discuss is to do it through the internal rather than the external. So the first conversations I've had many of over my career is to do with how do we react to a situation. Students I've often spoke with have had situations, whether it's behavioural, whether it's social emotional, whether it's contextual. And one of the things that we always drive down to is how does that student respond, interact, help them manage through that situation. Because the only thing they can really control is themselves. And I think there's great power comes with knowing that really the only true thing that you have a good overview of and good control over is yourself. And I think that's very powerful. And I've often used that as well in the second example with student leadership. For those of you involved in leadership, for those of you who have experience there, you try and stick to your beliefs, your aims and your vision. But you will get tested. You will get tested at times from people who don't share that mission, that vision. And that's okay, but that's where on an internal level, on an individual level, you've got to be aware of your own drive, your own mission and vision to make that happen. And the third one that I often have conversations with is to do with students when they leave our 4 walls and go overseas, usually to university. I've had a graduation speech not that long ago, and we talked about the power of self, and I talked about the power of how in the future they will be in relationships, they will be in situations, maybe in boardrooms or meetings, where they can be the change in the room. If you think about it, it's quite true, isn't it? You are that person and you can change your environment, and it comes from an individual level. I think that's a very powerful thing. And so what I mainly want to talk to you today is about self-awareness and how you can control that, and also meta-awareness. I think those 2 things are very powerful, and I'm going to do it through, as you can see the beautiful picture behind me, the dragonfly. Because the dragonfly also is a very rich and spiritual animal that goes through change and transforms. And the research is compelling. If we get the individual right, if we get that level of self-awareness and meta-awareness right, it has a massively impactful, positive impact on ourselves, but also our environment. So I'm going to take that journey, embark through the dragonfly, because the dragonfly goes through an absolutely gorgeous change, a transformation. They are adaptable, they are graceful, they are transformative. And I want to take that journey of a dragonfly and wrap it around my point today about how we can transform tomorrow through the individual. The first one is grace, and hopefully I found a lovely graceful picture for you. Grace in the context of human behaviour, it encompasses a lot of poise. And I think one of the things that I often think is a good example of this is grace over haste. Often in our lives, we're quite hasty. We often make hasty decisions. But actually, there's a place for grace. Grace is weaved into our fabric. And when we take that time, we make better decisions. We make more judged decisions. And so the dragonfly acts as that kind of example of their grace as they weave through the paddy fields and lush nature of Indonesia, about how they gracefully do it. And I think that an element of how we can gracefully approach what we do in life in less haste. And that often comes through things like mindfulness, taking a moment. Often we find ourselves forced into a situation to make a reaction. But I think the power of grace, less haste, is that first one that I want to talk about. The second one is adaptability. The dragonfly's journey is remarkable in many senses. They take a lot, they infuse their own capacity to make those navigational changes. Dr. Carol Dweck who many of you probably heard of, talks about a growth mindset and being adaptable. We must foster this growth mindset, and when we face challenges, instead of hiding away or fearing it, embrace the challenge, embrace the change, and that comes through a growth mindset. When I was asked to do this TED Talk, certainly nervous, certainly apprehensive, but taking it through a growth mindset and taking that challenge as an opportunity to grow is certainly a valuable thing in terms of developing the internal and the individual person. The third one, metamorphosis. Just flipping sides. And this talks about the incredible journey from nymph to ethereal flyer, I guess. This points to Dr. Ellen Langer, and she talks a lot about mindfulness and the effects on personal transformation and how that can impact us as an individual. To embark on a transformative journey, practicing mindfulness and being fully present in each moment is essential for something called mindful metamorphosis. So that ability to be aware and meta-aware about what we're thinking and our processes. That is what metamorphosis means. And it ends up with transformation. And as we know, the dragonfly transforms. An illustration about how we transform is often about, an example is about our own personal transformation and having the courage and bravery to follow our inner belief and our new skill sets as we develop, to have our own changes in our life, our own transformational changes. An example is an adult who changes career at a later stage. Certainly the later it goes, is more transformational and more brave and more courageous needed. So I think about the dragonfly, how they go through life and they change. The individual also has those opportunities to go through life and change for what they feel is more about themselves and their beliefs and their values. A good word that I like to think about when we talk about change is being our authentic self. And it's difficult to sometimes always be our authentic self rather than what we think is should be ourselves. So what does the research suggest if we get this right? What it basically says that in the absence of meta-awareness and self-awareness, the implications for the individuals, for families, for society is damaged, and the opportunities for growth and development are enhanced. On an individual level, a lack of meta-awareness, a lack of self-awareness, means that we don't take the opportunities. It hinders our personal growth. We find it challenging to address relationships and set meaningful goals. On a family level, it means that our relationships can be damaged, interpersonal conflicts and breakdown, family dynamics affected by it. And at a societal level, can lead to many negatives within society, but I think one of the biggest ones is something called a lack of empathy, something where it ripples under society. So if we get it right, it means that we have to have a fostering a culture of self-awareness, meta-awareness. It means that we are able to personally grow and individually grow because we're able to reflect on ourselves in society. So, to conclude, why can't we all be more dragonfly? And to think about that is, how do we take a step back? How do we slowly, without haste, reflect on ourselves as an individual within society and our own practices, not for only societal good and family good, but for our own good. If we take that moment to think, how do we adapt? How do we gracefully go about life in a calm way? How do we become decent and good people? I think the dragonfly shows that and emphasizes the way that we can manage our lives and adapt through it. Thank you very much.